All right. Okay. So last week we looked at how we can actually acquire data from a client side, and we looked at various parameters. We looked at the query parameter. We looked at the path parameter. We also looked at the header and the cookie. Sorry, recently in our last class. So basically, this class we are going to look at the opposite of it. We are, we are going to look at the opposite of what we did. This time around, we are going to consider what information we can actually send out. What information we can actually send out. So I'm gonna share my screen. All right. So basically, as usual, we just open up our project folder and then we'll kickstart and write the actual code. So I'll open up my project folder once we've been using. So mine is on my desktop and here project one. So I'll open this up and then I'll turn on my environment. So I believe that we've done that already. So just a CD into this and then turn on my environment. Activate. One more thing before we proceed. All right, so making a and Joseph co-host. Believe those were our reps, just in case. Just in case. All right. So I will simply open up my project folder and then so I'll cd into main. Okay. All right, so this is where we stopped in our last class. All right, this is where we stopped in our last class, and this particular class we're basically just going to continue from here. We're basically just going to continue from here, and we're going to look at response model. All right. So take for instance, we've been so far we've been sending out informations. Okay, so like what we've been doing here, we've been basically just been sending out informations. So, but then we want to actually control what information that we actually want to send out alongside some validations on those informations. So, how would we do this? How would we do this? So it's quite simple. Okay, it's quite simple, and and we're gonna see how we can actually do that. So to do this, okay, I would continue from this file. I'll continue from this file. When we get to a point where we have to use multiple files, I'll show us how we can arrange those files in a way that we can actually manage all of them. But for now, I'll keep writing all our code on this file, and then hopefully with time we'll be arranged it properly. So I'll just put a comment down here, and I will call this response model. Response model. Okay, so before now, let's assume that we were intending to do what to get certain information. Okay, so I will assume that this is the information that we want to actually get. Let's say we are expecting a user signed up. Okay, maybe we are expecting a user to actually sign up for let's say our application, right? And we have to actually write a route for that and then the required information. Okay, so as usual we know that we have to create that we likely have to create a model for the required information, right? So I'll create mine here, and I will call this signed up. Okay. And what I'm expecting here would be the username of this user. Okay. Or of course should be a string. So pandanting will carry other validation. Please note that this validation is being carried out by pandanting, not fast API, right? You think fast API actually borrowed pandantic and then uses them in its application. So I will also expect them to have their password during registration, and password should be a string as well. And I also expect their full name. So I'll call this full name. And of course, full name should be string as well. So that we can go with for now. So we create a route, and to create a route, we simply use the app because we may use it because app is the instance of our fast API. So just to confirm that. So we continue app dots, and this should actually be a post request. Okay, this should be a post request. And the URL for this that we intend to do is we could say the URL should be / signed, okay? And then the function for this, we're gonna say create account as the function name, create account, and because we are expecting the user details, okay, the user details, and we are expecting it to actually be of this of a pedantic model there. So it means that whatever you are submitting, it should be validated against this that specified schema there, right? And we know that if we leave this as user model, this will also be seen as a query parameter, right? So we return as usual. We return probably the user details, the user detail. So let's just hit this up and let's see if that worked. So I'll put on my postman. Okay, and that is coming up. While that is coming up, Mr. Joseph, can we confirm how many we are in intermediate? Because usually we have maximum of 10 people on the call. I believe that we are more than that. I'm assuming.
Okay, let me check on the Discord group.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. All right. And then the route was, let's confirm that, sign up. All right, and then we hit this. This should work as expected. Oh, sorry, our server has to be up and running. So UVCon, sorry, server was not running. UVCon main app dash reload. But we want this to happen each time actually carry out changes on our file. So I send this now. This should work as expected. Sorry, this should be post and update, and then submit this. Oh, you're missing something, and we are actually missing 18 on this code book. Okay, that's fine. All right, so we will send in the required information, which is username, password, and full name. So we have, first of all, we have our username there. Username. Username can be example. Then we have our password. password here would be at 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have our full name. And we have full name, and in this case, we could say sample user, okay, as full name. So we hit the submit again, that should actually go through. All right, so we could see that that actually happened, and then the expected result was sent back, okay. But at times, we may actually want to actually send out a specific kind of information, right? Say we want to actually filter out the password, right? Because it's not actually convenient to actually send back the user password in plain text as it is, right? It's not actually recommended. So basically, you want to actually probably send out the ID of that user and maybe and the rest of the details, say the username and then the full name. But sending the password is not actually a good thing or a recommended thing to do. So in this situation, we want to filter out what information should be sent out in this specific when coming to when actually making a push request to this route. We want to actually validate what information is being sent out. Okay, so we can do that by simply just creating another model, and then we specify the fields and the type of that field that we need to send out. So in this case, actually come here and create another class, and this class I will call it let's say user um, data, okay, and of course all these models must always inherit from base model. So in this case, I want to send out username, all right, and username should be string, and I want to send out full name as well, full underscore name, and this should be that. So now I have created this. So basically, it means that whatever information I intend to send out, right, Planet will actually carry that information and do and validate it with this, and then see is this information that I'm sending out, does it match this, right? So if it doesn't, right, it will do what? It will strip out the part that should not be there. Okay, so in this case, I will still return my user model, right? In this case here, I will still return my user model. But then if I go to the function, right? If I go to the function and then I add another parameter to the function, because this function can actually carry some other parameters which we can actually see from there, right? So from what we the hint that is actually being showed there. So this is actually showing us that the other parameters that what that our function can actually carry. So the parameter that we want to use is response model. So now response model here should actually point to the desired model that we wish to output, which in this case is the user data. All right, is the user data. Now, if we fire up this request again, all right, now the what we actually intend to actually return is what is the user object, the user detail. That whatever was being submitted here, right? Because this is what the request body, right? Whatever is being submitted here is what we intended to do what to send out. But with this response model now, we're simply saying take whatever has been submitted and then match it against this, right? Whichever one is not there, filter it out and send what is expected. Now, if we fire out this again, then we should not expect to see password in we should not expect to see password here again. So if I go back to my postman, confirm that my server has refreshed. Okay, and go back to postman and then fire this request again. Then we see that that password has been removed from the response that we just sent. Is that logic? Understandable? the equation, right? So the silence means no question. So basically, that is how we. Okay, so someone's mic is on.
Okay, so the response model actually hid the password from showing on our postman then.
Yes. So it takes whatsoever exactly. So it takes whatsoever we submitted and match it against it, right? It so basically it checks right for these specific fields in that response. So it checks for the examine field. If it's there, it will grab it, right? But then also check if the examine field is a string, right? Because this variation here must also hold. So if it's a string and then it actually matches, right? So it get those ones that do match and return it. So filtering out those ones we not actually want to send out to to the user, right, or to the client. So that basically what that response model will do. Okay, but at times we may actually just want to send a single response, right? Okay, so at times it may not necessarily be a model like this, all right? At times we may just want to send a response, right? So basically, what we could do is we could just send that response straight without actually going through this. And to do that, we can actually import the HTTP response from a fast API, and then we use that to actually send a single response rather than all this. So let's see how that actually works. Let's see how that works. So I will simply go to the top, and then I would import read response from fast API. So simply come here and then I'll import my response from fast API, and then I can then actually use it to to send out the response. So that's simple. Let's see. So okay, well we could just simply copy this, or probably we could just change this. And then say in a situation where we wanted to at least send out maybe something outside not a pedantic type, okay? Say probably wanted to send out a dictionary or so, then we could just actually go with our default way of doing this, right? Probably wanted to just send out a message saying, okay, you've signed up successfully, and then without the need of sending back all those details, then we can actually do that. So what we basically just do is we just actually just do what we've been doing since. Yeah. But then in a situation where you need to actually send out a pedantic model and actually can add some filtering, then response is what we want to use. Is the question? The question. So another thing again that we can also note is this one actually is for documentation, right? So we can actually let the or let's say a developer that is actually going through our documentation to actually understand, okay, that this route, this is the expected output, all right? This is the expected actually return from this. So we can do that the same way we actually do type hinting for variables. We can also do type hinting for function. And to actually carry out type hinting function, after creating your function like this, okay, you can now actually come here and then specify, okay, this is what type of information we are expecting to do what to be returned. And we do that by doing this dash and then that and then the type. So in this case, if this response was supposed to actually send out an integer, then I'll put int there. Okay. Then I will specify int there, and that would work. But in this case, sorry, that shouldn't be there. That was supposed to be for the function. All right, so it should be here. So in this case, not that when we send out something else, let's say we send out a string, say hello, that your code will break, right? Your code will not break. But this is just for documentation sake, right? For documentation sake and for text editor type hinting. Because if this was supposed to be an actual function, right, not a route, okay, the moment I actually try to actually bring in this, right, so I actually get to see that this function is expecting what some input and it's going to return what an integer at the end of it, right? So but then you wouldn't want to put a type, one type, and then you are sending out the next type, because if I'm going through your documentation, I have it in mind that what that this route is, I'm expecting what an integer, and then you're not sending me a parenting model, right? So please, when in this case, you want to actually you want to actually specify the appropriate type, right, based on what actually returning. So in this case, if I was to return this a user model in this case, okay, so I would just simply come and say that this man here is going to return a user data. But and then in the documentation, what we would see is that at the end of sending a request to this route, we are expecting to see a JSON object that comes with only what username and full name. So that means before I even send a request here, I know that my password is not coming back, right? That once I specify my username, password, and full name, that my password is not coming back, right? So this actually helps in documenting that, right? Is that okay? Is that okay? But in a situation where you are sending another type of model, say a model that let's say you are sending the usual response, just response that you're actually sending here, right? Then you actually specify a response here. So you're coming and put the response, right? Means that this once I go to the documentation, I know that this man here, yeah, that this route, I'm expecting what is a response, a specific kind of response from here. It could be a redirect, a, it could be a redirect response or thereabout. Okay, is that okay? Is that okay? Question, question. No question. So the silence means
Uh,
no.
sorry. Hello, hello.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Because
Go ahead, Abby.
I, I was expecting, because based on what you said instead of using this user database model stuff,
Okay.
that we can use response. But how do we use response? I don't know. I thought you wanted to do an example instead of using this one. This class user
Oh,
database model. So I thought you wanted to do an example, but I didn't see any example
all right.
after
So
you
let's
imported the
okay.
response.
So let's assume that right. Let's assume that I wanted sending probably a redirect response. Okay. An HTTP redirect when an HTTP redirect response. So in a situation like that, right? What I could simply just do is come here and say okay. Say, so after specifying that, right, that this man that we're expecting a response, right? Either a JSON response or a redirect response, okay, that, but then we are expecting an HTTP response from this route. So I could now come here and then probably send out a JSON response, which in this case, I don't think we have JSON responses. So we have to import our JSON response up there. So we can import JSON response from API.response. So I will do that by saying from fast API responses. Okay. So I want to import okay, let's say a JSON response in this case. So we have JSON response there. And then I could just come here and then send out a JSON response. So a JSON response is quite similar to we've been doing here. Okay. So I'll put the JSON response, that response. So instead of just a content should be equals to, and the content is always a dictionary. So your content takes a dictionary. So I'll specify a dictionary here, and in this case will be message, and then I can answer registration, success, okay, registration successful, and that easy. And so I'll close this off, and then let's make this again. Let's shoot this again. So I send this again, and then we have that. So it means that you are basically sending a JSON form of kind of like a dictionary. So it's basically the same thing that we've been doing here. So you can either do this, or you can just type it out like this, and they both work, right? But then we need to specify that okay, we are expecting a response, a dictionary, something like this, right? But then if I'm sending this out, say a user detail, but that is pedantic model. So I need to actually specify here that at the end of this after sending a route here, we are expecting a pedantic model. All right. This is that okay? Is that okay?
Yes, thank you. Yes,
All
thank
right.
you.
Okay. So let's look at one more concept and then call it off. So we are very likely going to be having short classes like this because yeah, well, I can't just carry the entire curriculum and just cover it in one day, right? So we have levels of things that we have to cover, right? So for today, we're supposed to actually look at the model, the response model, and status code. And truth is that there's nothing really much about status code, right? So they are basically those code we see when we make a specific request. See this code here, 200, right? Data request the 200. So now each of these code has their meaning, right? Where we can actually look that up. So we have, I think status code starts from about we have 200, we have 422, we have 100. So there are a lot of code there that actually signify something. But then if they're specifying a code, let it be a generic code, a code that every developer can understand. Don't specify one because I can't remember the last time I sent the request and I get one as status code. Okay, so please when specifying a code, we need to be generic, right? Because each of these code has their meaning, and you can actually look that up on Google. You can actually go to Google and then look up response codes, right? Response codes. So, and I think the appropriate code, not I don't think the appropriate code for this request for this route we've just made is should be 201. 201 actually stand for created, right? Because we are assuming that we are creating accounts for you, right? Right. So the appropriate code should be 201, I think. And 201 is a generic code that stands for that an item has been created. All right. So in that case, how would we want to change this from 200, right, to 201? All right. So 200 here actually stands for successful. So it means that the request that you sent was successful, right? So that means that request went through the server and carried out some information and came back successfully, right? And but then we didn't just send request, right? Something happened. We created an item. So we would love that code to what 201, telling you that an item has been created was successfully. So how do we do this? It's simple. We still go back to our our function, our route function, okay, and then we can specify it there. All right, so we can add comma and then we can add status code. So please, what you should know again, what you should note is that these parameters that we've used today, we've used them in the route itself, right? We are using them in the route themselves. The decorator, sorry. So they are decorator parameters. Right? We did not specify them in the function. We specify them the in the route itself. Okay. So please note that so we won't make the mistake of taking this down to the function itself. Please. So with that, we can with status code parameter, we can specify a code for this route. So in this case, I can specify 201 being what the standard code for creating an item. And then when we send this again, then we should have the updated status code. So if we send this, let's see if our okay, that just refreshed again. And that seemed not okay. Let's see. Okay, let's see how we can fetch that. So I think this is how do you call it, Postman default code. So it basically just shows you that your request was successful. But then we need to see other existing other status code. Let's navigate Postman. Right. And let's see. Let's do this one more time. Where's this? And let's send this again. Still showing as two. Let's see. Well, let's see. Right. So I wouldn't want to switch to documentation, but then I'm certain that it's there in documentation. Let's see. Right. So let's see if you can force this to show on Postman. Let's try this. So let's see status. Start. But then need to import status. Give me a sec. Fast AP. Bring status there. Let's start to use the HTTP. So these are basically all the HTTP code that you ever need. So let's change ours to 201 being created. Let's execute that and see if that changes. So that didn't actually change. All right. So, but then that actually should change because shoot, shoot. So for obvious reason, we can't see that on Postman. But basically, that should actually appear on our documentation. But I don't want to take us to documentation because that is a session for another day. So that's basically how you can actually um, change your status code. So you could either specify the number itself, say 201, okay? Or but then if you can't remember this number, because now it's not a must that you must remember it, what you could do is you could actually import status from fast API, which is what I just did here. And then once you simply just type status dots, then you have access to all the generic status code. So if you could just simply just choose from which of these you want to actually change it to. So we have about from 100 all the way to 1015 TLS handshake. All right, so I'll put it back at created. Created. Yeah. And that should show on our documentation, and that should show on our documentation. Question. Question. See. Yeah, we got answer the question.
Yeah. I feel why should we expect the status?
I'm
Because
finding it difficult to hear you, sir. I'm finding it hard to. Hello? Think I've lost. Timitope, I'm finding it hard to hear you.
the question is status code should not be set. It should be set based on whether the request is
Mr. Tope, I'm not actually hearing you. Any other question? I think we're finding it hard to hear Mr. Timitope. I think.
Okay. This is not really a question per se. Okay, since we could not see the status code changing on Postman at the moment, is there any other way that we can actually validate that the status code has actually changed?
We could actually view that from the documentation. That's one way
Okay,
we
okay.
can. That's one way that we can.
How about viewing it from the browser console?
Where?
The browser console, that Chrome or
I don't think that is possible. Let's check. We can't because we can actually make post requests with our browser. But let's try this to let's change this to let's change to get. Let's see. And let's make this man. Let's make this one. So now return that. Let's make this one to stay empty. So let's try this browser then. See that works. That was sign up. All right, let's see on browser console. Should be on network. I'm thinking that would show me. Let's see. No, not coming up. My goodness sick.
So why can't we use Swagger? Fast API Swagger.
Yeah, that's Swagger. The documentation is a solution for another class. So I don't want to dive in there just now. You can check it on your from your end. That should be documented that this man here will have a response code of that. All right, okay, let's see something. Let's see what we can do. All right, so we have our response there. Just import it up there. Okay, so can we say sure, that should work. For some reason it's not. So let's put this back on. And for now, we're expecting this man to give us this. Uh, and listen, I'm using update that.
Mr. Silvio,
Yes.
my on Postman, my status worked. It's showing 201 created.
So that means the problem may be for my own postman.
Maybe. Because that's
Is
just
there
my own
is there anyone
201.
that have seen something different? Anyone? Anyone? Let someone try now on their postman. Let's be sure that it's from my postman. Someone else tried.
I don't have Postman on my system. So
Who doesn't have postman, please?
Something, something like that. Postman.
Samsung. You
Yes.
don't have postman on your PC or on your phone.
My PC, my PC.
How do you test your APIs?
I use
Swagger.
Swagger.
Okay. Any other person that has postman? Anyone? So I want to believe that the problem is from mine end. So that work. That should work. All right, that should work. So if it works for Miss Ada, it should work for all of us. I assume. It works for her. All right, so someone else has tested and it's worked out for them. So if the fault is from my own postman. I think my postman needs an update. Oh. All right. So any question? Any question before we?
So, the question I have is not relating to what we did today, but
Okay.
well, it's relating to UVCon itself because while I was working, whenever I'm working on fast API, maybe
Okay.
I'm trying to do something on fast API. So maybe if I've kind of like load the server for too long, I noticed that if I should press Ctrl C to end the UVCon, it will not end. So I have to maybe close my VS Code and restart my system. So if I use it for too long again, same thing will happen. Control C will not kind of like terminate the UVCon server. So I don't know why, or is there any way I can terminate it without outside Control C?
Control C breaks terminal execution. So if it's not working, then I think at that point it's not actually fast. I don't think it should be fast API's fault, or or the problem should come from fast API. Could be device, I think, or you could try. I think if someone says try Control Z. So if, at times I try Control X as well. I think Control X has also works. Let me try. So someone say try Control Z. So you could try that and see if that works for you. But Control C should break your server, and for any reason your server is not breaking the Control C, don't think the problem is from. I don't think the problem should be from fast API. Any other question? No other question. All right, guys. So that is where we end for today, and we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys on Thursday, same time. So like I said, we are very likely going to be having short classes like this for a couple of months till we get to the end. All right, guys. So in the essence of the question, please have a wonderful evening. See you guys on Thursday. Bye.